All right, guys. So the PFL has bought Bellator in the biggest MMA merger since UFC absorbed Strikeforce. I wasn't originally on board with this whole merger because while it was rumored, it was really unclear if Bellator would be absorbed into PFL, if it would continue as a separate brand. There was a lot of questions. Would they cut the Bellator Fighters and just take the name and video library, kind of the same way that the UFC bought Pride and all they really got out of it was a video library? There was a lot of questions surrounding that. Donn Davis, the PFL founder, went on Ariel Helwani's show this week and clarified quite a few things that have me a lot more on board with this transaction than I was just a few days ago. First, he explained that all 210 Bellator fighters and all 21 Bellator employees are welcome and offered to join the PFL company, which is pretty cool because you guys have seen in many business mergers and buyouts, most of the bought out company loses their job. And that's kind of what I was expecting here was most Bellator fighters, especially prelims and young fighters that aren't, main card name value type of fighters for Bellator. I was expecting the PFL to let them go. But Donn Davis said himself that it's better for the sport if they keep all of them. And I appreciate that because as somebody that watches a lot of UFC, I noticed that the UFC does what's best for themselves, not necessarily what's best for the fighters or the sport all the time. I'm not knocking anybody's business choices, I'm just observing. The second thing that I was unsure of was if Bellator would continue as a promotion or if it was going to be completely done away with. They kind of did something in the middle where it continues as a one-off event series for PFL, most likely in a pay-per-view format, maybe a streaming format, we'll see. I was unsure about that. I would have probably preferred from a business standpoint to have everything under one brand, one logo, and have some continuity across all of the events. But I do understand the PFL is trying to build a global entity. And given that Bellator has quite a bit of clout in Europe and other parts of the world, much more than it does in the US, I understand why they decided to opt for this Bellator Champions series. I don't think that the UFC is in any sort of hot water, and I don't think that they're going to lose a ton of viewership because of this. But something to understand is that the UFC is not really like the NFL or the NBA where there is nothing else. ONE Championship is the biggest MMA promotion in Asia, which is the biggest population in the world. So ONE Championship is bigger than the UFC in that part of the world. PFL is slowly building their way up. They're expanding into Europe, Africa, Latin America, and they have an ESPN deal. Now, I'm not saying the UFC is in hot water, but there are some challenges on the horizon, especially when it comes to streams, business, and viewers. I think it'll be a very long time before the UFC isn't the leader if that ever happens. But PFL said themselves, they were trying to be second, and now they're trying to be the co-leader. And I see what they're doing here. I know they haven't turned a profit, and I know that people like Chael and Dana dismiss them as not being a profitable company. But a lot of people forget that the UFC was not a profitable company. And the Fertittas wanted to pull the plug on it with how much money they had put into it. And it ended up working out. The hypocrite Dana White saying that the PFL is not a profitable company, so it's not going to work out, is just not true. So there is some challenges on the horizon, or challengers, you could say, on the horizon for the UFC's undisputed #1 spot in the MMA space. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think that PFL can challenge them in any sort of way? Are you more interested in PFL after this purchase? Because I definitely am, and you guys are going to be getting more PFL videos from me going forward. So let me know what you guys think in the comments of this PFL Bellator merger. I think it's good for the sport, and Bellator was a dying business anyway, so I can appreciate that those fighters still have somewhere to fight. Because if Bellator just went out of business, or if Paramount would have just shut them down, it would have been a dark day in combat sports and a dark day in MMA for the fighters, because that would have given the UFC even more leverage when it came to contract negotiations and fighter pay. I think that this is good for the sport. Let me know what you guys think. If you like this video and you want more content just like this, like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. If you want more content from me, go check out my weekly comedy podcast, the Hissyfit podcast, and go check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. I'll link them both in the description down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.